Everybody is good morning. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
And I think I may put some socks.
Yeah, this is very
wear some
necessary.
socks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Socks help you very much.
Yes. I think I should. Don't take. Oh no.
You can have some naked feet and you can have some.
Birds. Beautiful. We're Monday, 7th of December. We're nearby Gwalior and we're here for SAPA meeting. SAPA meaning is South Asian Peace Alliance. It means that some countries of South Asia thought that the need was here to build a upper level network of non-violent organizations to make an alliance to help each other. So once a year they meet somewhere. Last time it was in Sri Lanka, one time was in Nepal, this time is in India nearby Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh. And they stay together for 2 or 3 days to discuss the future and the concrete action which can be done. So we have friends from Sri Lanka, from Nepal, from Bangladesh and from India. We're very happy to be together.
Yes, I work for Quaker Peace and Social Witness in London, who have been for some long time interested in peace and conflict issues, and many have committed their lives to this. We were visited by Raja Gopal in London in 2001, and he invited us to take part in some of his work. It was from this initiative that the South Asia Peace Alliance emerged, and we are now involved with at least 5 countries, but we hope 8 of the South Asian countries. We would like to think that this becomes a network that has meaning for people, that enhances their work, and that builds friendship and cooperation across the region. As individuals, we hope they go forward. As organisations, we hope they go forward, but we also hope they can do some cooperative and visible work that hopefully less relies on Quaker Peace and Social Witness as not just a donor for this, but also a key actor. I think the key actor aspect from my perspective needs to shift. I think there needs to be much more a sense that the ownership lies here, the leadership lies here.
That's a real Asian, South Asian.
So it's a South Asian dimension, and we can assist from closer to the boundaries. That's my hope. So we will have to see what people think and want to do together.
Each country core group member will initiate a process within the country of bringing people together to form a SAPA Nepal, a SAPA India, and from that process, if there are recommendations where we think that those organizations are really big and they are already South Asia players, those names are to be recommended to the SAPA core group. Then that becomes a process through which they come in. So today that is what we have to decide. I mean, through our own process of negotiation within our country, if we have identified very powerful actors, then we need to put those names here today and say, look, we have already interacted with them, we feel they are very powerful, their contribution to South Asia is very important, and these names cannot be contained within the country because they are not a small NGO, but a South Asia player. So we need to bring them in as core group members. So that was the understanding, as far as I remember.
The future of SAPA is to say what we are about are the livelihood rights of the people. Because the common people, the big issues they're facing, are about their survival.
And if we as a total Sapa said it's about the livelihood rights of the people, so we will invite NGO people to come and get training only if they are closely linked with the grassroots people in their work.
If we are really clever enough to connect that Sapa, that non-violence into livelihoods sector, then we are grateful. So otherwise, livelihood will be separate and the non-violence would be separate. So this sometimes there's a possibility. Sometimes we maybe separate those things into two. So that's my fear sometimes.
Our focus should be more general than only livelihood of a particular section. So it is something like a movement for a social change through non-violence means. So it's a movement for change through non-violent means.
Free mobility of the people in South Asian region and then non-violence movement, it goes together with, we can link it with, without free mobility, we cannot work. And then this is being, people's movement has raised that issue, mobility, free mobility of the people in South Asian region.
How relevant are we in today's South Asian situation? Right? So, our role should look as if we are relevant. Right? Otherwise, one more network is not the agenda. And why should we spend time and energy to create one more network? How do we become more relevant in addressing the problems of South Asia? That is why we are together. So, initial analysis was that there is so much conflict in South Asia. Sri Lanka was going through a conflict. Kashmir is going through a conflict. Nepal was going through a conflict. Chittagong was going through a conflict. Northeast India. So we found that there is so many conflict happening and there is no effective intervention happening other than the intervention of the government. I mean, from the civil society, we don't really look at these conflicts. We don't try to respond to this conflict as we believe that conflicts are to be managed by the state. We have no role in managing conflict. So the initial interest was, can we train more and more young people to understand conflict and learn skills and techniques to deal with conflict? Because if you don't have the skills and capacity to deal with small conflict, how do you handle larger conflict in Kashmir and Sri Lanka? So, idea was to train people through action, not in theory, through action. How do you understand conflict? How do you deal with conflict? But the later on analysis is that much of our conflict, though it all looked like a conflict between police and Naxalites and police and people, much of the conflict today that we are facing in South Asia region is related to life and livelihood. See, the real conflict, I mean, other than the larger conflict between Pakistan and India, etc. But then if you really look at the conflict in its real naked shape, people are really in conflict with their own state at various places, conflict with various departments. There is a real conflict at that level. People are struggling for survival. Their land resources and water resources and forest resources, everything is taken away. So, I'm fully for remaining where we were. Conflict, I mean, conflict is our agenda. And how do we resolve conflict? We need people to learn to deal with larger conflict. But then do we have people who know how to deal with smaller conflict or people in their day-to-day life? The conflict in relation to livelihood, the firewood, ration, the BPL card, these are all conflict, So how do we analyze conflict from an ordinary person's point of view and then help people to deal with this conflict and become experts in dealing with conflict, in fact. I mean, then you say, okay, I can also deal with conflict in Chittagong or Nagaland. So how do we take our people through a process rather than just giving a theoretical understanding there are conflict in the region and we all need to be active, we need a network. So from that philosophy to really getting down to doing things at the real level is one big concern. And then we will become relevant. Much of the institutions are not relevant because they don't address those issues, and people feel, okay, we struggle for our life and you don't care for us. So how do we bring this relationship between institutions and networks and people's problems?